After decades of sales success, Lexus has released a new RX model. This one is sportier than ever. Let's check it out. What's up everybody, Jared here with carbuzz.com, and today I'm bringing you a review of the 2023 Lexus RX. Now, the one that I am showing you is the RX 500h F Sport Performance. So this is an all-new model within the RX family. They have never made an RX that is this sporty before. This is actually the second F Sport Performance model, the first one being the IS 500, but the RX 500 is very different because it doesn't have a 5-liter V8 engine under the hood. It actually has a 4-cylinder turbo with a hybrid, which we will talk about later. First, we're going to talk about the exterior of this car. So this is the latest generation of the RX. It was a little bit controversial when it first debuted. You obviously have that Lexus spindle grille, but the controversial part is here at the top, how the body color kind of fades into the grille before it actually becomes a grille. I didn't love it at first. They showed it off in white, which I thought looked particularly ugly, as if the car had kind of like a big overgrown forehead, but it depends on the color for me. This color is called Copper Crest. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. It's actually one of only 3 colors that you can get on this RX 500h F Sport Performance model, and I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, kind of like a rose gold iPhone. Now, the new version of the RX is actually the same length as the outgoing RX, but the wheelbase has grown by 2.36 inches, giving you a little bit more space on the inside. Now, speaking of the wheels, we do have these matte black 21-inch wheels that look fabulous. I love the contrast between it and sort of the copper color. We've also got 6-piston front brake calipers here on this RX 500h. Remember, this is the sportiest, most performance-oriented RX that we have ever seen. Now, this one comes wrapped in Bridgestone all-terrain tires, but you can also get Michelin Pilot Super Sports on the RX 500h F Sport Performance. And walking around here at the back, we do have the kind of connected taillight bar. This design language has been around since the NX debuted. I like it here on this bigger car as well. I'm actually starting to like how Lexus is spelled out across the badge. I think it looks better on some models than others. I really did not like it on the NX and on the LX, but I actually think it looks quite nice here. We have our RX 500h badging here. We have Direct 4, which is the name of the all-wheel drive system. And then surprisingly, for a performance-oriented model, we do not have any exposed tailpipes. They are all hidden underneath the car. Now, in terms of cargo space, we've got about 29.5 cubic feet of space behind the rear seats. I just activated the kick automated tailgate here. We do have one of those on the RX 500. As you can see, 29.5 cubic feet of space back here. We've got a nice little cargo cover here. We've got some hooks here that we can pop out. Those are very convenient. I always like when we have those. And we do have an optional back seat package. It's going to include 2 things. You get heated and ventilated rear seats, but then you also get these power folding seats. So I go ahead and click these buttons here in the back, and as you see, the rear seats are going to go down automatically. So those are not just like spring-loaded and they just drop down. Those are actually motorized and they are lowering themselves. And now we've got a really nice storage area. Those don't really fold flat, I will say. I believe that they do fold flatter if you just get kind of the normal seats, but the added convenience of that is really cool. And wait until you see this feature. They don't just go down by themselves, they also go up by themselves. Now you can be super lazy, just click a button and the seats will go up. You don't even have to lift a finger. That is really cool. I think that's worth $1,200. But that's not all you get for your $1,200. In addition to the seats folding automatically, you actually get controls here as well. So I can fold them all the way down pushing this button, or I can go ahead and recline them back even more to get even a little bit more comfort back here. The RX has always been a pretty nice size, but this one is even better. This seat is currently back in its like entry and exit position. So if I slide over here, you can see I do have a really nice amount of legroom. I've got 2 USB-C ports here. I actually have heated and ventilated seats. That comes as part of that $1,200 package. And in here, I've got my simple cup holders and some storage as well. And last but not least, let's check out the front seats. So the RX 500H actually has these sporty bolstered seats. You can see we've got this nice black leather with like a little bit of suede here on the bolsters. We have F Sport written into the headrest here. Now, these bolsters are a little bit tight for me. I felt that I actually had to squeeze in them just a little bit, but they are quite comfortable aside from the bolsters. They are heated and ventilated, no massage though. Lexus doesn't really do massage in a lot of its cars until you get to the very high end. And black is going to be your only option on the RX 500. You cannot get any of the other colors that are available lower down the range, surprisingly. Now let's go ahead and hit the power button and boot it up. And fire up our new Lexus infotainment system that is starting to appear in many different Lexus models. Now, interestingly, even though this RX 500 model is actually the top, most powerful version of the RX, this 14-inch screen does not come standard. It comes with a 9.8-inch screen. However, if you add the Mark Levinson audio, it's 21 speakers, sounds fantastic. If you add that for a little over $2,000, I believe it's going to include the screen as standard. The Lexus configurator is a little bit confusing on that, but I believe that's how it works. This system does have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. A lot of it is housed on the screen. We do have a volume knob, which is quite nice. We also have temperature controls here. I do like those dials as well, very similar to a Mustang Mach-E. But things like the fan speed are controlled here on the screen. It is pretty easy to access because all of this stuff kind of stays here at the bottom of the screen. You can also pull up a larger climate menu. It is a little bit annoying that some of the things like putting the car into sport mode, configuring the HUD, a lot of that stuff is handled on the touchscreen. I do wish there were maybe a few more buttons available, but there are some ones like the 360 camera down here. You actually have that cool thing where the Lexus kind of disappears as you drive. So as you see, I'm going to move it and it'll kind of start making the car invisible, which is quite cool as it kind of views what's beneath the car. So that is a really cool function as well. I really like this 360 display for that reason. Now, here's where I have some serious kind of complaints about the touch sensitive or touch capacitive buttons in this car. So you can see that the steering wheel, we have got two sides, two directional pads here, neither of which is labeled. You can actually program these to kind of do whatever you want. So you can have your audio controls on one side, car functions on the other. And the only way to actually tell what each of them does is by putting your finger on it, and then it'll actually pull it up on the head-up display, which is a little bit weird. I believe if you turn the head-up display off, it'll actually show you in the gauge cluster here, but either way, it's just an extra step. I like the fact that you can customize what these buttons do, but honestly, Lexus, just pick what they do, leave it as is. I really don't need this full customization available, honestly. I think it's a little bit weird. We do have a customizable tach as well. If I go ahead and put the car into sport mode, you can see, let's see. I messed something up. There we go. Sport mode. You can actually get a full tachometer, and then I go ahead and put it back into normal mode. It's going to be your power charge eco gauge that you normally get on Lexus hybrids. There are a few other modes that you can put the car in as well. And other than that, the technology, I would say, is pretty good in here. We do have one of those rear view mirror cameras. I believe this is still optional as well. We do have a panoramic roof, which is quite nice. It opens quite big. And overall, I would say that the interior is just what you'd expect from a Lexus. It is very premium, very nice. However, I kind of wish that the RX 500H was available with another interior color besides black, because it is a little dull in here. All right, now let's get the Lexus RX 500H F Sport Performance out on the road. Now, that is the longest name that I have ever seen on a Lexus RX, but this is the most powerful RX that Lexus has ever made. So as I've been mentioning in this video, the 500H F Sport Performance is the most powerful RX ever. It gets a version of Toyota's Hybrid Max drivetrain with the 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine under the hood. Now, we're familiar with this engine. You can get it in the NX. You can actually get it in the base RX as well. It produces a little bit less power on its own here in the 500, 271 horsepower, but you get an 80 kilowatt e-axle on the back, So together, between the engine and the 2 electric motors that this car has, you're going to be getting 366 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. Now that makes it pretty quick. So let's come to a complete stop. I'm going to go ahead and put it into sport mode for good measure, and let's see how it gets off the line. Ooh, there we go. Oh, quick. Wow. I have never driven a Lexus RX that gets off the line like that. That is really interesting. But I do have to kind of describe what happened there on that launch. Yes, this thing is pretty quick, but what happened is the engine sends power to the front. Then it realizes, oh, you were flooring it, and it needs power to the rear wheels as well. So those electric motors kind of kick in as well. And they're not quite as powerful as that turbocharged engine up at the front. So you do get this kind of weird disjointed acceleration. And I want to make it perfectly clear. This is only happening when I'm flooring it from a start. This is really not something you'll notice when normally driving the RX 500, but it does kind of feel like the front wheels kind of fight for grip, then the rear wheels kick into action. It's not quite as smart or quite as sporty as something like an Acura NSX, you know, a supercar that has a hybrid drivetrain. When you're just accelerating normally, the power accessibility is amazing. Woo! It just goes. Like you have that torque from the electric motors. You have a transmission, which I sure hope you noticed when I did the acceleration there. This is the first Lexus hybrid that I can remember that actually has a transmission rather than a direct drive. If you're one of those people that hates how something like a Toyota Prius sounds when you floor it and it just kind of goes like a CVT, even though it isn't actually one, you will really like this. I liked this in the Toyota Crown, I liked this in the Toyota Grand Highlander, and I like it here. Quick downshift, power, smooth delivery, just like a Lexus hybrid should be, except now it actually sounds good. Speaking of that sound, they're definitely doing some kind of enhancing to this engine. I have no problem with that. Honestly, I think whatever they're doing makes this sound more like a V6 engine. It's really hard to make a 4-cylinder turbo sound good, but listen here. I think that sounds really good. I'm gonna give Lexus props for that one. Now, if you want, you can take manual control of this transmission as well. The shifts are relatively quick. This is definitely not a super sporty gearbox, but again, I'm just so happy with the fact that there is an actual transmission in this hybrid that I'm gonna count it as a win. Now let's answer the question of whether or not this car deserves the badge of being called an F Sport Performance. So Lexus actually started F Sport Performance with the IS 500, which was a really interesting car that had a great engine. It had that 5-liter shouty V8 engine, you know, so it had more power than a standard Lexus RX. But in terms of suspension and everything else, it was just kind of soft and really not up to the level of a full F model. And I think that the RX 500 follows in a very similar suit. We've got this hybrid drivetrain that produces a lot of power. I really love the power, but this is a little bit sportier than any RX I've ever driven, but it's definitely not like a Canyon Carver in any respect. Apparently, you can actually get this with some Michelin Pilot Supersport tires, but we have these Bridgestone All Seasons that they just understeer and they make too much squeal when you push them hard. I really wish that Lexus would have sent me one with those Pilot Supersports because I'm just not getting the full effect with these Bridgestones. In terms of how the car actually handles, we do have adaptive variable suspension on this model. All F Sport Performance models are going to have that on the RX here. Now you can also get it on the F Sport Handling RX if you want like the styling of an F Sport, but you're not willing to spend the big money that this 500H is going to cost. Even in sport mode, where the suspension gets a little stiffer, it is very nice suspension. This is definitely firmer than some of the lesser RXs. If you just want your cruising mobile, don't be getting the RX 500H and don't be getting the F Sport handling package with this suspension. This definitely gives the car a little bit of a sporty, firmer ride that is definitely good enough for daily driving, but might be a little uncomfortable for the Boca Raton crowd that normally buys a Lexus RX. You know the sort I'm talking about. And in terms of the steering, I'm not going to go ahead and say that this is as sharp and as communicative as some of the German options, you know, a BMW X5 and Audi Q8. But it is better than any Lexus RX I've ever driven. If you go back and watch the last review I did on the previous generation RX, I believe it was an RXL, so sort of that longer one, and I think it was just the normal V6 350 model. I called that thing a bag of pudding in terms of how it handled. This is just night and day better. I know it's not perfect with the tires and the suspension could be a little bit firmer for a performance use, but the engine, the steering, everything is so much sharper on this new Lexus RX. In fact, it's on a new platform altogether. The JAK platform is what Lexus calls it. It's 198 pounds lighter than the previous generation RX, and you can really feel that. Now, this particular model also has rear wheel steering. I'm not noticing it too much as I chuck it into the corners, and that's a good thing. Usually when I step out a car, I can feel the rear wheels kind of moving and it kind of unsettles the car. In this, as I put more steering angle, I could almost feel it if I just like remind myself that it's there, but you really can't feel it, and that is a good note for Lexus. So now that I'm done talking about the RX 500, I should briefly mention the other drivetrains that you can get on the RX. This is going to be a pretty low volume model. The other RXs are going to be the ones that people are actually going to buy. So let me go ahead and talk you through what else is available. So the base RX 350 is going to have the same engine as this 500, but without any of the hybrid stuff. So a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with 275 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. You can get that with front-wheel drive, or you can get it with all-wheel drive. Then there's the RX 350h. Now, this is the one that I want you to pay the most attention to because I think it's probably the best RX out there, even though I haven't driven it yet. The RX 500h uses a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, no turbocharger, so that's the big difference between that one and this 500 model. But it does have electric motors that are more tuned for fuel economy. So you're only getting 246 horsepower and 233 pound-feet of torque, making it the least powerful version of the RX. However, the fuel economy is the best. You're going to be getting 36 mpg in that car. So if all you want is a comfortable, luxurious cruiser, you like all of the interior, everything I just showed you, but you're going to be driving it a lot of miles and you want the best fuel economy, the 350 is going to be the one for you. Now, it's not on sale yet, but there is also a 450h Plus model. I know it's so confusing how many RX models there are, but this is basically the same drivetrain that you're going to be getting in the lower NX 450h Plus and the Toyota RAV4 Prime. So it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, same kind of setup that you get in the 350h, but it adds on an 18.1 kilowatt hour battery pack, so you get more power, you get 302 horsepower, and I haven't driven that version of the RX, but I have driven it in the smaller RAV4 hybrid, and it does feel, or in the RAV4 Prime, sorry, and it does feel quite sprightly in that, and it does give you a 37-mile EV-only range. So that is the only version of the RX that you'll be able to drive around on EV-only power for a significant amount of miles. Now, if you're wondering, the RX 500h that I'm driving gets about 27 mpg average. Now, that is a lot lower than the 350h, which gets 36 mpg, but remember, this hybrid system is more tuned for performance. You're getting 366 horsepower versus the 246 that you get in the 350h, and you're not gonna get 27 mpg combined in something like an Acura MDX Type S or a BMW X5. So for the performance, the fuel economy of this RX 500h is actually quite good. And one little secret that Lexus won't tell you, if you're willing to step down a little bit in terms of power, you're gonna drop down to about 340 horsepower and about 400 pound-feet of torque even, which is what the Toyota Crown produces, you can run this engine on regular fuel. The only difference between this and the Crown and the Grand Highlander is that this takes premium gas, but I've talked to Lexus and I've talked to Toyota about it. You could run the Toyotas on premium and get the power that you get in here, and conversely, you could save a little bit of money and put regular in this, but you will lose a little bit on the power. All right, now let's wrap up by talking about pricing for the 2023 Lexus RX. There are quite a few RX models, as I mentioned to you during the drive, so I'm going to briefly go over where kind of the starting and ending point for this model is. So the RX 350 with front wheel drive is going to start at $48,550. That is the most basic version of the 350 that you can get. If you want to step it up to all-wheel drive, you're looking at about 50 grand. For about the same money, you can get the RX 350h, which I mentioned, which already comes standard with all-wheel drive. Now, we don't have pricing for the plug-in hybrid model yet because it's not on sale, but this RX 500 F Sport Performance is by far the most expensive version of the RX that money can buy, starting at just under $63,000. At that price, there really isn't all that much that competes with the RX 500. I would say the closest competitor is going to be the Acura MDX Type S, but that is a 3-row vehicle, even though it has about the same power. So the only other comps that I can kind of come up with are German cars like the BMW X5, Audi Q8, and Mercedes GLE, and I just don't think that many Lexus customers are going to be cross-shopping with the Germans. I really like this Lexus RX 500, but the one that you see here is priced at over $70,000 with all of the options. This is already quite an expensive vehicle, and I'm kind of shocked at how much does not come standard, even on the nicest version of the RX. So as much as I really like this drivetrain and the performance that it adds, I think that most people are going to be more comfortable with one of the lower trim RX models. And if I were shopping in that price range, I would definitely recommend the 350h for its amazing fuel economy. I really hope you've enjoyed this look at the 2023 Lexus RX 500h F Sport Performance. For more videos like it, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. And if you want to read more about the RX 500, be sure to check out carbuzz.com. I'll see you next time.